Today we're going to be working on solving absolute value equations. So just as a reminder, the absolute value of a number is its distance from 0 on a number line. So since the distance is non-negative, the absolute value of any number is also non-negative. So anytime you see the absolute value symbol like this, you're going to know whatever number comes out of there is going to be non-negative. Now if there's a negative on the outside of it, which we'll look at in a minute, that changes it a little bit. However, when you're in the absolute value symbol, it's always non-negative that comes out. So right here is the definition of absolute value. Okay, so any real number a, if a is positive or 0, the absolute value of a, and if a is negative, then the absolute value is the opposite of a. So any value outside of here, right, any value, okay, either way, left or right, is going to be so many units in a positive number. So we're going to evaluate an expression with absolute value. Okay, so if I'm going to evaluate, I need to take my negative 7.5 and I'm going to plug it in to my n right there. Okay, so what I do is I do 8.4 minus, and then an absolute value, 2 times negative 7.5 plus 5. Okay, so just like the order of operations says, I go inside grouping symbol. So in this case, absolute value is a grouping symbol. 8.4 minus, and then in here 2 times 7.5 is going to be negative 15, okay, plus 5, absolute value. Now negative 15 plus 5, okay, is still negative 10. Alright, and now, okay, we said anything within an absolute value comes out as its distance from 0, so the distance from 0 to negative 10 is 10 units. So 8.4 minus 10. Okay, and then I just do that on my calculator. 8.4 minus 10 is a negative 1.6. There it is. I evaluated it when n is negative 7.5. And we can put any value in for n, and we'll get a value out. Okay, here's 2 guided practice problems you can try now. Example 2, solve an absolute value equation. A standard adult tennis racket has a 100 square inch head, plus or minus 20 square inches. Write and solve an absolute value equation to determine the least and greatest possible sizes for the head of an adult tennis racket. So anytime we're looking at a word problem or any sort of problem, we have to write an equation, an absolute value equation. We have to think about this equation right here. The absolute value of x minus c equal to r. Now here's what it is. X is our variable. It's our amount that we have. Okay? C is what's called our central value. So in our case, our central value is going to be 100 square inches. And then finally, R is our range. And so in our case, our range said plus or minus 20 square inches. Now the reason we can put, excuse me, that's R. This is C. Okay, now the reason we can put 20 in there is because we're using our absolute value equation. So it could be positive 20, and the absolute value comes out as 20. It could be negative 20, or somewhere in between there. Okay, so let's plug in our absolute value equation. So here it's going to be x, so some value of a tennis racket, minus 100 equals, and then my range is going to be 20. So now this is an absolute value equation I can solve. Anytime I'm solving absolute values, okay, what I like to do is I like to put a line right down the middle, and I solve it when it's going to be my range is positive, and I'll solve it when my range is negative, because I'll get 2 different values. So I can say, let's say x minus 100, okay, is going to be equal to a positive 20. Okay, inside there's positive 20. Or x minus 100 could be a negative 20, but when I put it in the absolute value then, when I put it right here, then it comes out as a positive 20 because it's an absolute value. So now I have 2 equations that I can solve. So the first one, if I add 100 to both sides, okay, x is going to be equal to 120. Or if I add 100 right here, x could be equal to 80. So we said that a tennis racket is normally around 100 square inches, right? But it could be plus or minus 20. So lower than that would be 80, 20 less than that, or 20 more than that would be 120. So your tennis racket is going to have some square inch amount between 120 and 80. Try these equations right now. You don't have to set up the equation, but you have to be able to solve them. All right? Now, example 3. Let's try and solve this one right here. Okay? So, if I want to solve for x right here, all right, I still have to get rid of this 8 over here. So now we have the absolute value of 3x minus 2 is equal to, well, 1 minus 8 is negative 7. Now, before I go any farther, I have a question for you. Can your absolute value ever be negative? We said it does not. So right here, since this absolute value is equal to a negative amount, we'd say no solution. Okay? There is no value of x that I can put into an absolute value that's going to crank out a negative value on the outside. Okay? Here's a couple guided practice problems. Obviously, if you solve them, there's going to be no solution. However, I want to talk about this. When I'm solving them, there's a couple different things you can do. You can symbolize no answer as either one of these right here. Okay? The two brackets symbolize that there's nothing in between them. Or this like 0 with a line through it means nothing either. So there's no solution for those. So you can use those if you'd like. They're your choice. Alright, so in mathematics there's a constraint, and it's some sort of condition that a solution must satisfy. So equations can be viewed as constraints. You have to find a number that works on both sides of the equal sign. Now, there are going to be times where you do everything right. You do all your work correctly, and you're still going to get an answer. You're going to get 2 answers, but you have to check your answers because there's times when they don't work. And a number that you do all the right steps, you do everything correctly, but it's not a correct answer, is called an extraneous solution. And we can check for those. Let's look at this example right here. So it says solve the absolute value of x plus 10 is equal to 4x minus 8. Check your solutions. Okay? So just like we did it before, okay, we set it up and we say, okay, 2 different ways. Well, either x plus 10 can equal 4x minus 8, or x plus 10 is equal to, now I want that other side to be negative. So I look at this and I say, okay, well, if I get everything in negative, it would be negative 4x, and then negative times minus 8 would be positive 8. Okay? So you'll see I have 2 different solutions now. So let's check it out. Okay? All the x's on one side. Well, I'm going to say if I subtract 1x from this side, and I'll get 3x minus 8 is equal to 10. Add 8, add 8, 18 is equal to 3x. X is equal to 6. Okay, so I did all my work, get x is equal to 6. Now I try this one over here. Okay, I'll add 4x to both sides. I get 5x plus 10 is equal to 8. Subtract 10 from both sides. And you get 5x is equal to negative 2. Divide by 5, divide by 5, x is equal to negative 2/5. Okay, so here are 2 solutions that I can put into my equation. All right. Now, let's look at 6 first. Okay, so if I put 6 into my original equation with an absolute value, 6 plus 10 would be the absolute value of 16 is equal to 4 times 6 is 24 minus 8. Now, absolute value of 16 is 16. 24 minus 8 is 16. Okay, so this one works. So I can circle it. X equals 6. Let's try the next side over here. All right, so negative 2/5 plus 10, okay, is going to be a positive 9 3/5. Now, on the other side, it's going to be equal to, well, negative 2/5 times 4 is going to be a negative 8/5 minus 8. And now what you'll end up seeing is, okay, negative 8/5 minus 8 is going to go down. That's going to be a negative 9 3/5. Okay, so can you ever have an absolute value equal a negative solution, negative answer? The answer is no. So this one does not work. Okay, so that one doesn't work. So this is not a solution right here. So we end up only getting one solution, even though we tried it both different times. Here are 2 guided practice problems you can stop and try now.